A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" And then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there, ahead of them, went the star they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child and Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The word of the Lord. Today is January 6th, the feast of the Epiphany, 12 days of Christmas from the time that Jesus was born to the time that the wise men appeared and recognized Jesus as the Messiah. And so traditionally we hear the story and we talk a lot about the wise men. But I decided I didn't want to talk about the wise men today. We talk about that every Epiphany. So instead, I thought I wanted to think a little bit about King Herod, because I never pay much attention to Herod. Partly because as much as it is easy to villainize or make a caricature of Herod as just sort of this evil bad guy who was inspired to do the wrong thing, and clearly he's got the black hat and the mustache and the evil monocle, tying up women and putting them on train tracks. Herod actually was a human being like all of us. And he did what was a very human thing, which is that even sometimes, even if he knew the prophecies, and even if he knew the Messiah was coming and knew it was God's will, it's not what Herod wanted. He was afraid of God's will being done. It's not what he wanted. He liked being in power. He liked his life as it was. He didn't want this to be true, and so was going to try to make it not happen. This is why it says in the story that he tries to get the wise men to tell him where Jesus is so that he can do away with Jesus, to keep his life as it was. God, of course, intervenes and sends the wise men a different way so that Herod doesn't get his way and Jesus gets to grow up and be the Messiah. But it makes me wonder about my own life. And if you feel comfortable doing so, I want you to try to look at this in your own life and think through, are there times in your life not where you are blind to God's will, or not paying attention to God's will, or just not able to be mindful of it, but there are times when you know what God's will is, and it's not what you want. And so you are resistful, or resentful, maybe even obstructionist. If I was honest, I would say I've had those times in my life too. I've had those times where I knew what the right thing to do was. I knew what God wanted me to do. It was plain to see what God wanted me to do in an instance, but it's not what I wanted. And in my own self-interest, I won't even pretend that it was because of not knowing the right thing to do, but it was because of my own self-interest that I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So it's a very human thing. I think that's what's lifted up in King Herod in this moment, is a very human thing that we all fall victim to. And so if you will, take some time this Epiphany. Yes, let us wonder and marvel at the coming of the Messiah in our lives. Let us give thanks for the wise men and the work they did. Let us give thanks for the way that God comes into our lives and shows us the way. But let's also be mindful of our own tendency as human beings sometimes to want it to be our way instead of God's way. And we may even do things to try to block God or get in the way. And while we see how that works out for Herod, we should be mindful in our own lives of when we are falling victim to that. If we are more mindful of that, we can work on it. We can try to grow and improve, and in that way be more aligned with the wise men and a little bit less like Herod in the story. Amen.